Hey, welcome to Unlock Potential with David Archibald. And today I have Matthew Weber as my guest, a two-time author of Fit for Disruption and Disruption Leadership, which I think maybe he has a crystal ball because that first book came out right before COVID. And talk about disruption. This is probably in our lifetime the biggest disruption that you can possibly have without being a world war. So today I want to ask Matthew a few things. And first off, how did you know that the world was about to be disrupted? and the book comes out literally just a few weeks from after the big problem we had with the disease in 1920.
Yes. Yeah, it was fascinating, David. I wrote the book in 2019, and I just came out of a corporate role, and I felt at the time I had something to give, and in my life experience and my corporate experience, there was certain lessons that I just thought it would be great to sort of pen it down into a book, and it was actually a goal of mine to write a book. And I remember, I was getting close, and the name of the book and the cover was actually finalised on my birthday, which was the 2nd of January 2020, but the release date was April 2020, and as we know, in between that date and April 2020, the world went into crazy. And I actually spoke to the publisher quite seriously, and I asked them, I said, look, do you think we should actually publish this? And they were curious about why I was concerned about that. And for me, it looked as though I was being opportunistic, and it's like I quickly wrote a book, to fit the times. But it wasn't that, and it was actually that conversation plus a conversation with a neighbour that I had. I was speaking about the same concern, and they said, if it just helps one person, Matthew, then then go for it. You should do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. In disruption in business, happens on micro levels, but man, I mean, that was like major disruption. When the book comes out and the world is starting to deal with that, what were some of the things that maybe your book talked about that just matched up perfectly with the situation that was happening?
Yeah, look, a great question. The book is basically broken. It takes a model and breaks it down into three parts, and the first part is around being commercial, and that's very much around strategy and having control of your business. The second part is around how do you solve for problems, and how do you problem solve? How do you be creative with your with solving those problems? And then the third element is how do you affect change and lead change. I think all of the elements really touched on it, but for some, it was almost like the big commercial part or the strategy part got completely tipped on its head, and it was a little bit like telling people to suck eggs, because things had moved so quickly that if for those organisations that didn't have that control and didn't have that rigour, they were scrambling. And what it did is it probably just provided data points which proved the theory, which was those organisations that did have structure and did have control of their business were actually far more adaptable to the situation, which is somewhat counterintuitive, because people think that the more control or the more they get a sense that it might be more bureaucratic, which then doesn't allow for adaptability. But what it did do for those organisations was, they might have had a very strong balance sheet, or they may have had a very clear organisational culture and way of doing things that helped them. But I think it's certainly that the second two elements that people, organisations and leaders had to solve for a really big problem.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to really change how they thought about things and how they did solve for those problems. So so that was the first big take. That it was new rules, and that was, I guess, what the book was saying. That, what if? Actually, interesting. When I did write the book in 2019, I did ask the question, what would happen if we had a global pandemic? I seriously asked the question, and my publisher took it out. Oh, not my publisher, my editor. My editor took it out. But so the first thing was, they got a lot out of being able to think about how to solve the problems, and a problem that is at such scale that it's never been seen before.
Yes, that's right.
And it really gave people the opportunity to reimagine
Yes.
what was possible. And for some people that actually became liberating. For some organisations and some leaders, it actually helped propel them.
Yes.
But what was fascinating about it was the pandemic had an enormous impact on people.
Mm-hmm.
And the third element around how do you lead change became so critical. Everyone's world, in their organisations, the people that people were leading, not only was the leader's life turned upside down and the organisation's life turned upside down, but the people that they were leading, their lives had been turned upside down. So there was a lot in there around, how to lead people and how to help them and keep calm amongst all the chaos and be able to still work together and work towards an outcome without a huge amount of panic.
Yeah, exactly. I think, at least from my experience, leaders of especially of a business, you're responsible for two things. You're responsible for the people and you're responsible for results.
Yeah.
And then when I think about disruption and how that comes into play. So give me an example of disruption with people, maybe in your organization, and how you can overcome that. And then maybe one on disruption in, the business itself.
Yeah. There's, disruption can be quite broad. So perhaps if I try and define it a little bit better, yes, certainly there will be things like technological changes and new business models, and it could be what Apple's doing. It could be how Netflix changed the Blockbuster
Yes.
and all of those sorts of things, or how digital cameras outplayed Kodak and so forth. And there's certainly that's disruption at scale, and we're seeing it right in this moment with AI and what's happening in that space. But disruption isn't just about the big, industry changes or the big changes within, product design and so forth. It becomes very much also around business models and what actually happens to an organisation. So as you said, leaders are responsible for people and results, and people's lives are always changing. Consumer tastes are always changing. Geopolitics is always changing. There's all these elements, and without wanting to sound cliche, disruption is now a natural state. It's a natural state. But disruption doesn't have to be a war, and it doesn't have to be a pandemic, and it doesn't have to be Netflix or Airbnb. It could be a shift from physical retail to e-commerce.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing it with e-commerce. It's moving to quick commerce.
Yes.
So things are just moving at such a rate. But then it's disruption can be, you could even have a new CEO come into an organisation and disrupt the way that the business model works and about how they address problems and how they think about it. So how does an organisation and how do leaders respond to that? So it's big and small disruptions.
So disruption is literally just change, in a sense.
Yeah,
there's just changing of what's happening now. Something's disrupted. It could be negative, it could be positive. how would a leader, or what should a leader try to study or try to get better at in a mindset to deal with that?
Yeah, the change, the change element is absolutely constant. I think the disruption part is where there's something that's fundamentally shifting. It's not an incremental change, and it becomes something a little bit larger. For a leader, there's a couple of things that they need to think about. One is where do they want to play in the space of disruption? It might sound like a silly question to ask, but an organisation can become a disruptor. So they can disrupt the way that they take a product to market. They can disrupt a product or a category or an industry, or they may disrupt their business model. They may even disrupt how the future of work operates within their organisation. So there's that category where a leader can become the disruptor, but there's also the category where you are disrupted.
Yes.
Yeah. And so then it's like, how do you respond to that? So you don't necessarily have to be leading the disruption, but you need to lead the impact of disruption that's happened on you and on your people. I think for a leader, it's first of all being very clear about where you are in that space and where you are, I guess, in the maturity of that. But then for any leader, what the consistency is, across both is is your organisation stable, and put another way, are the foundations right? Have you got the foundations set? Because if you don't have your foundations of your business right, whether that's financial, strategic, your people, just the foundations, you're in no position to try and disrupt a market or an industry, because you can't even get your own house in order.
Yeah.
But equally, you can't expect to be able to respond to disruption if you don't have your house in order either, because that will just add to the chaos, and that will just add to the pressure of all of your people. So again, I talk about it a lot. It always starts with the foundation. But then you said about mindset, and this is, we see it a lot with AI. I was actually reading something this morning, and just how fast AI is being adopted, but how wrong organisations are getting it. And the reason why they're not getting it really well is because they don't understand the impacts that it has on their organisational design. And what I mean by that is they're learning a skill. It could be, I learn a skill in Excel, or I learn a skill in product development, or I learn a skill in something, and then you try to apply it, but you need to understand what it means to the business and how to affect that. And what's happening, what we're seeing is AI is coming out with some great tools, but organisations don't, or leaders don't actually know how to embed that culturally within their organisation.
Yes.
And how do they shift the mindset? Because if they don't, again, sounds cliche, but if they don't understand the why they're doing it, they will go down so many rabbit holes, and they'll become lost, and they won't be clear on what they're trying to achieve. We've seen this, a lot in the last 20 years when companies try to implement new systems, new digital transformations and so forth. And the bells and whistles are great, but a lot of the time they forget the why.
Yeah.
And, so one of the most important questions a leader needs to ask is why? And, but the mindset, just to go forward from that is, what can we do different? What if we did have a blank sheet of paper? How would we design this? If we could do it, and just take a complete new perspective.
Okay. So in change and dealing with change, agility in a leader to be able to pivot, when disruption happens that's out of your control, and you have to respond to it rather than react to it. What are some ways that a leader can stay a little more agile and not so rigid, maybe.
Yeah. I think the first point is it's not necessarily the leader's role to respond to all the challenges that are presented in front of them. The most important thing a leader can do is develop a team and develop an organisation that has that capacity. Many leaders, particularly in times of crisis, still believe, because they are the leader, that they need to have all the answers, or they need to be the person that responds, or that they're the people that need to front up in front of the cameras, or they basically feel this psychological need to have all the answers. What great leaders do is they've already pre-prepared their people and helped them have the mindset to also ask some sensible questions and some good questions, and ensuring that they have an understanding of where they're going and what they're trying to achieve, but ensuring that they're empowered and that they have, and empowerment's a loose word as well, you empowered not just in mindset but tools and capacity to be able to respond in the way that they need to, because they're going to be closest to the problem.
Yes, correct. Yeah, the empowerment might have to be specific a little bit too, right? To tell them, say specifically, here's what I give you the power to change, when needed.
Too many leaders go, you're now empowered, go forth and
Yes.
and do your good work. The problem with that is empowerment is not just about giving them a license to be able to experiment, to try new things. It's about giving them the tools or the space or the opportunity to be able to work through that, and also the opportunity to make those mistakes. And that's where, it's best to respond or best to design around disruption before it actually occurs. But if you can create an organisational culture and a system within your organisation where you can test, learn, iterate, and you can try things in a smaller sample size and get people's confidence up and be totally comfortable with breaking things, but not breaking it in a way that can break the organisation, but
Sure.
break something small. But then that will give them the ability to build their own confidence, but also give them the problem-solving ability and work through that. That's when it's a leader's opportunity to help give them the right tools or the right mindset or the right way of looking at problems. And it's only when it's actually happening that they can do that effectively.
A lot of companies hire you to come in and take a look at their organizations. Maybe they have an issue that they're asking you to address. What's one of the common pitfalls you see in an organization? What's something that sticks out that you see a lot?
Yeah, many,
Yeah.
many, but there's also many consistent themes. One certainly is this week, and it could be what's happening in geopolitics. It could be in Australia there's a cyclone hitting Queensland. There's chaos everywhere, and it can become overwhelming. It become very overwhelming, and then you overlay that with organisational disruptions and things that are happening. Again, it just completely adds to that overwhelm. But what most organisations don't focus on enough is actually what they can control. And they're talking about what's happening externally and all the things that are being done to them. And they're coming up with all the reasons why there's a challenge, and all the reasons why that they can't progress forward. the great leaders and the great organisations in the space of disruption are the ones that recognise that and accept it, and sure, plan for it and figure it out what it means and have that level of understanding. But they put their weight of effort into the things that they can control.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that for me, myself, as same as, when economic turndown happens, things that are out of your control, you have to really switch the lights and say, okay, what are we doing now that we can change to handle things better rather than complain about what is out of our control.
And that's certainly not to pretend that everything is rosy when it's not. Mm-hmm. I mean, what people want more than anything else is honesty and transparency. Yeah. But people can respond to situations and respond to disruption or even plan for disruption when they know what they're dealing with and what they're playing with. So if you have a leader that is actually hiding not hiding, but perhaps putting a sugar coat on the problem, then that's not giving the people the opportunity to be able to absorb it, to understand it, and to be able to work through it in the way that they need to. So facts are very important, and honesty is very important, and then that links into then why it's so important teams are able to communicate and have effective communication channels amongst each other. And one of the, a lot of organisations are also very scared to have difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. And leaders are scared to have difficult conversations. But difficult conversations are a really good thing to have because it helps you to think critically. Where it becomes a problem is when there's a cultural misalignment and it becomes personal and it's about the person, not about the problem. But if you have people focused on the problem, you're miles in front of everybody else.
Yeah. Okay, Matthew. On that point, there's something I feel sometimes that I need to fix in myself, and one of those is being honest, being transparent. Sometimes when things aren't going good, it starts to turn into you're trying to motivate with fear. Okay, so yeah, I know motivating by fear is definitely not the way to do it, right? So how is it that a leader can maybe still be transparent, but not letting fear motivate or get in the way?
Yeah, I'll try and come up with an analogy or a different story that I was told that may help explain it. And I had a friend that was doing a TED talk. And they had 6 weeks to prepare this TED talk, and they were, you could imagine the importance of it and the preparation that was planning, and the amount of testing and practicing. And it was getting very close to the day off the TED talk, and they were chatting to somebody about it, and they said, "Oh, I'm so fearful. I'm really scared to get on that stage, and I'm really scared I'm going to blow this." And he was talking about fear. He was talking about the internal fear that he was feeling. And the advice that he got, I think, was so powerful because I think it applies and answers this question, and that is, it's not about you. It's about the message you're trying to share. And with that, he understood that his fear was about him. And that's fine, and that's a perfectly human, natural response to have. But what was more important was the message that he was trying to convey to the world and the idea that he was trying to convey to the world. And if I relay that to the question that you asked me, how does a leader work through this, and particularly when they have fear about how transparent or what could go wrong or where they're at. If the leader can just ask themselves, what is the message that I'm trying to share, or what is the problem that we are trying to solve? Because if you bring the attention to the problem you're trying to solve, somehow the fear somewhat evaporates, because it's not about an individual anymore. It's about something bigger.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, you have to create the bigger purpose, and instead of using fear to do it. I hear you. You have helped many businesses and many individuals on multiple continents, actually. And in that, what do you see as one of the ways that maybe a young leader, or someone that's upcoming in an organization, can help unlock the potential they have in themselves? What's a way for them to maybe realize that they can offer more, or they can do more?
I think that's such a beautiful question. I really do, and it's a question that I've particularly over the last 6 months have been asking myself, and it's something. It's actually the problem I would like to solve going into the future, because young people are inheriting a very different world to the one that we had. And the organisations and the way that we do things, it's going to be very, very different. Now, that's not all bleak, by the way. A lot of people make it out that that's all bad news and the world's in chaos and it's all a problem, but they're living in a world where they have access to more technology, to better education, to better health systems, and even things like mortality rates are the lowest they've ever been. So longevity is there. So there's plenty of upside, but they're inheriting a very complicated world, and it's a difficult question to answer, but I actually think it may be quite simple in the end, and that is that they can take ownership, and that's okay, of their leadership style. Of course, learn from others and learn from the ways, but if they that they need to create the future that they want and that they need, that's right for them. And we can, the older generations can help guide and help plan, but it's not ours anymore. We have to hand the button. What our responsibility is to set them up for success. So if I was a young person, I would, of course, have mentors, and of course I would listen, and of course I would try to learn from those that have done well in the space that they want to. But I'd also maintain a level of courage and conviction about myself, about my own confidence, and the style that I want to, about what I want to bring in the world. Because as a young person, it's that perspective that will take them forward. It's the older perspectives won't. It's now outdated. But equally, that's important for the current leaders to also spend a lot of time to understand the younger generations, and to actually really think about how they can pass the baton on and how they can help leaders. Too often I hear is, it's not, our generation was different and we did it better and we did it like this, but my dad said that, now I'm saying it, and then
sure.
So it's it's their world now, and we've got to give them that space. Now,
you do a lot of one-on-one coaching with business leaders, and you see a lot of things. What's something that a business leader may be reaching out to you for, a problem they're having that may be about disruption or something maybe more current?
Yeah, the organisations come to me with with many either problems or opportunities. But fundamentally, it's going to be around how organisations can design themselves or coordinate themselves to be able to set themselves up for success. And that can come in a number of ways, and it can come through, how you look after your people and how you prepare your people to be set up for success. It may be, how do we organise ourselves from a structural and from a physical element. But it's also, how do you, I help a lot of organisations embed strategic objectives and financial objectives into the culture of the organization.
Now, I know you from Business Executive Network, and I've had the opportunity to sit in one of your workshops last week that you provided a lot of insights, and that's one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast, because I think that you do really understand a lot, and helping people is something that obviously I want to do also. I see that in you. What is it that drives you to help other people?
Yeah, look, we all have a story, and my story, without going too far back and to make this too deep. My father had a transport business when I was growing up, and it went through a period of it doing well, and then there's a period where it really did not go well, and that basically undid the entire fabric of our family, and it near destroyed the family. And I was growing up in a time where things were very difficult, and to the point where I left home when I was 15, and a lot of that was I was just so damn independent anyway, and I was just in a hurry to get on with the world. But what I understood was the health of organisations, whether it be a small family business like my father's transport business, or whether it be a large corporate, because I've worked with many corporates, but there's so many people that make up those corporates with families and with children and their own stories and their own circumstance. And I really believe in this comes actually from Stanford University, who I do a lot of work with. Their thing is change lives, change organisations, change the world. And I have a fundamental belief that economic empowerment and the power of commerce is a way by which we can actually improve society. And I think that if I can help organisations do better and create opportunity and help the young people, I think that's a great contribution that we can make to this world.
Yeah, that's really good. What would you say is the difference between success and significance in your life?
Wow, that's a great question. It depends, of course, on how you're defining each. When I was younger, I was probably more focused on success. I had boxes I needed to tick, things I needed to achieve, and things were quite external to a point. It wasn't intrinsic, and a bit of that, I won't say I ever lost my way, but I lost deeply who I was. And I wasn't connected so much with what I was doing. And the word significance for me, really puts the onus or the attention back on others and about what your contribution is into this world. And in 100 years' time, not many people are going to remember you, me, or many people, and even that book will probably never be read again. But even if that is significant for 25 years, I think that's worthwhile, and I think if it helps people, and it helps humanity, or helps people, and it only has to help one person, I think that's significant.
I think the power of YouTube and this being on YouTube now, your grandkids are going to be able to watch this at some point, and having legacy and significance is really important. what's a wish you have for your grandkids that they're going to watch this someday? So we fast forward 35 years from now, and you have a grandson, and he's trying to figure out what Grandpa was about. What do you want to tell him?
I had my children quite young, and as you know, I think I've told you, I'm 49, and I was blessed last year to actually, by having my children young means they're now at the age where they're having children. So last year I was blessed to become a grandfather. Although I don't let anyone say the word, because I still, I think you have to be at least 50 before they can call me a grandfather. But it's interesting, and I'll link that back into what you're talking about, significance, and also back into what you're talking about with younger generations. It did jolt me, and it jolted me in a really, really, really positive way. And that is, when you're raising your own kids, it's actually quite difficult because you're actually focused on the success and providing and doing all those things. And when you're a little bit older and have become a grandfather, you have a very different perspective. But I want to create a world that is full of opportunity. And again, that links into my ethos that I believe that there's the power of business or the power of organisations to create opportunities is very, very significant. I also really hope and pray for them that the world becomes a kinder place. It needs to be a lot kinder, and I think many people confuse leadership with authority and trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do. But it doesn't mean it can't be kind. And the very, very best leaders I've had the opportunity to work with, and interestingly, the most successful, and I'm talking very successful corporate executives who have delivered outstanding financial performance, are the ones that were kind.
I believe that. I think that means it means a lot to know that that's how you feel, and you want to explain that to grandkids. But also, when I flip that over, I know you, I've met you several times, and I know that you're actually very kind. I had a prejudgment on you from the very beginning, and that prejudgment, I thought, man, I have to find out for myself. And when I found out that you were incredibly kind, and you're actually very willing to help and listen to other people. So I know for a fact your grandkids will be happy to know their grandfather was that type of man. Now, what's one tip that you can give to leaders today to help them unlock some kindness maybe in their lives, that they can make an influence to the people that are around them?
I mean, the word empathy certainly comes to mind, but again, that can sound a bit loose. But if a leader sits there and reflects and thinks about their own life and their own experience, and whether that leader's a billionaire who's had a lot of fortune, they would have dealt with many of their own issues, to somebody that has gone from rags to riches and everything in between, or even someone that's just down on their luck. If you reflect on your own life, you know that it was never a straight line, and you'll certainly realise, well, I certainly know in my case, I haven't been perfect, and I've made mistakes, and I've let people down, and I wasn't perfect, but I always went about it with right intent. But I don't know many humans that aren't like that I've met. Everybody has a story, and everybody has their own experience, and everybody has had to deal with their own hardships. So if you can understand that from your own perspective, but whenever you sit across from someone, just ask yourself the question, or just remind yourself that, that this person, what you say, could make a big difference in their life, because they've potentially have gone through, they're potentially going through something or have gone through something. So then perspective becomes really important. I told the story before when I was young, left home at 15, and how that's so important into what I do. But when I was 15, I was going down the wrong road. I was going to end up in a lot of trouble if I didn't sort my stuff out. And I had who became my economics teacher. He saw me clowning around in the schoolyard, and I went to a pretty bad school as well, and it was not great. But he pulled me aside and he said to me, he said, "Matthew, I believe in you, and I believe you've got something to offer this world." And that's all it took. One statement, which probably took him 10 or 20 seconds to say, completely changed the trajectory of my life. To the point where I went from what was one of the worst schools in my state to now I'm on teaching teams at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University. So education is a core value of mine. But if he didn't take that moment of 20 seconds to share his kindness, my life could have been different. And that was just one person. Imagine if that could be multiplied.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's incredible. Speaking of your work with Stanford, explain a little bit of what you do with business coaching and through the University of Stanford and how that works.
Yeah, I've had a number of roles within Stanford, but there's two that I can talk to specifically. One is I'm a course facilitator and a business coach for a number of the programs, such as designing organisations for a culture of innovation, the power of story, critical analytical thinking, strategic leadership, and foundations of leadership. And then some others that I do from time to time. And in that, I work with other course facilitators, but I work with the faculty, so the professors, the professors that have done the research and that are subject matter experts or are the owners of the topics. And we deliver programs to executives globally around the world. A lot of that is online, but it's not just about delivering content, but work closely with the professors to create an amazing learning experience for these executives globally. As part of the programs that run, what they do is they then get coaching to be able to apply that, to apply the learning into the real world. And then I act as I am a coach to many of these executives and help them bring their learnings to life. The second role I had with Stanford was they do a lot of work, Stanford do work in emerging economies to basically that whole change lives, change organisations, change the world. And I had an opportunity last year to spend in South Asia, and I was living in India working with a number of high potential scale up businesses, large, they're sizable businesses doing well, but taking the Stanford, knowledge and experience to these leaders and helping them create opportunities for the people that they're serving. And I spent 12 months doing that with Stanford.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, you shared a lot of insights. You shared some stories. How can somebody get a hold of you? How can somebody, get more information maybe about your leadership coaching, your one-on-one stuff, your book? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, look, there's a number of channels. So The first is the website, which will be fitfordisruption.com. You can email me direct. I'm always happy to have a conversation with anyone, even if it's to share your experience and share your story. I love stories and I love learning about people. And my email address is m.weber@fitfordisruption.com. So yeah, they're probably
All right,
best.
good. I'll add all that in the show notes. Well, I want to thank you very much, Matthew, for joining us today, sharing these insights. And if you want to get a hold of Matthew, I suggest you do if you have any issues. This guy's got a wealth of knowledge and wisdom he's willing to share. I'll put it in the show notes. You can reach out to him. Thanks again for watching today on Unlock Potential, and have a great day.